So we'll be moving straight to the final panel session, and of course we'll be looking at financing and developing clean energy.
The last two sessions together. Imagine this one and this one.
Clean energy infrastructure in a state electricity market, and of course we'll be looking at promoting clean energy consumer products in a state electricity market. We're merging the final panel session, and of course I'll be inviting first to the subject matter expert for this panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, the managing partner, Frontier Alpha LLP, in the person of Mr. Ebipere Clark. Please put your hands together.
Can we please put our hands together for him?
Please note that we are joining plenary 4 and 5 sessions together. So, we would also like to welcome the professor in the person of Professor Lateef Akanji, who is a professor of Petroleum Engineering Department, University of Aberdeen in Scotland. Please put your hands together for him.
We'd also like to welcome the representative of the CEO ARM Harith, that's Richard More-Oshodi. Can we please put our hands together for the representative? And of course, we will be inviting
You're welcome, sir. Please have your seat. Please join us welcome Mr. Dave Uduanu. May we have Mr. Dave?
Mr. Dave Uduanu.
And of course, the subject matter, remember we are merging plenary 4 and 5. And so the subject matter expert for incentivizing and promoting clean energy consumer products in a state electricity market, we have Mr. Theophilus Nweke C.
From Cloud Energy. Can we applaud him, please, as he comes up?
Mr. Theophilus from Cloud Energy. All right, please also join us welcome Mr. Rotimi Thomas, CEO Sunfi. Please join us here on stage. Mr. Rotimi Thomas. May we also have Mr. Chuks Umezurora, CEO Oxano Solar. Please join us on stage, sir. May we also have Mr. Olabanjo Alimi, Group Head Renewable Energy, Sterling Bank PLC.
Can we applaud them, please?
Also, let's have here on stage Mr. Abba Aliyu, CEO Rural Electrification Agency. Let's keep the energy. This is the room full of energy. We're talking energy. It's the energy sector. So let's keep the energy high. I like the smile on your face, Mama. All right. And of course, the moderator for this session is no other person than the Head Energy Infrastructure Advisory, KPMG Nigeria, in the person of Mr. Erhabor Okogun. Please put your hands together as they take their place. Can we please put our hands
together for our moderator and, of course, the panelists?
And of course, we have Mr. Daniel Muller, who is the Executive Director, COO, InfraCredit, on the panel today. We also want to recognize Mr. Oluwaseyi Okunga, who is here as well, Okunuga, who is here as well.
Can we please applaud this panel, please? It's a merge of 2 sessions, and of course, we would hand over to you to have your conversation.
You're welcome, sir.
Media, are we ready?
No, over there is fine.
Well, the day is well spent. I must say that everybody is happy at what is happening in Lagos, and the energy in the room is high. Let me stand on all existing protocols and give thanks to the Honorable Commissioner for organizing this session. So, it's a big topic we are talking about. How do we get Lagos consumers incentivized for adopting renewable energy? Media, please, can we have the slide? Okay, waiting on when the media will have the slide ready. I think it's just 10, 15 minutes on my side to speak on this topic. The name of the slide? Cloud Energy, my PA says. Sorry. So, basically, let's start by looking at the energy mix in Lagos. Many distinguished gentlemen have spoken today advocating how gas can impact on the energy mix. But what is critical is how does renewables actually fit into this? And if you look at the slide, we have a mix of all energy efficient products that we are looking at. How is it that we can create an electricity market with which people can adopt these assets and still be able to make the transition? So let's go to the next slide. So to go on this slide, or rather to address this topic, we have to just look at why government. What is the business of government? We must understand what government stands for and what it is aimed to do before we can understand why government has to provide these incentives as well. Government is just about people. The core business of government and why government exists is about the people. So government has to create such an enabling environment to allow the people to do what? To thrive. And like we can see the happy people in Lagos enjoying themselves because of what? Government. So government exists because of the people. Next slide. So for the people to be able to enjoy the benefit of government, we have to look at how does the energy in Lagos State work, and what are these key consumers of energy. Lagos, from a study done between the Lagos State government and the Sustainable Energy for All, media, next slide, Lagos has about 4.5 million generators running. These 4.5 million generators, either I pass my neighbor, I'm bigger than my neighbor, or I'm aspiring to, generate more power for myself, or contribute to CO2 emission in Lagos State. From another study, Lagos has about 1.8 million vehicles on the road. And these 1.8 million vehicles are all consuming fossil fuel and are all emitting carbon. A World Bank study also has shown that there is associated high death rates associated with what? Carbon pollution. And most of us in Lagos today, if you don't have an air conditioner, you will not be comfortable simply because everywhere is too hot. We are blaming the ocean, but also it is our lifestyle within Lagos that is also causing it. So we have energy coming from the grid, from gas plants, and renewables. And renewables are just a little portion of this energy mix. Next slide, media. So we can see from transportation to energy, to the healthcare, and to the general energy demand of Lagos, that only a certain little portion of it is met. And if you check it nationally, it is still the same issue everywhere you go. So how do we redress this? And what is critical for us in Lagos is that this is a city of over 20 million people. Next slide. So the energy demanding part comes from primarily consumer products. electric ICU vehicles that are on the road, diesel gensets that are on the road, and cooling systems in the market, and we also have huge losses associated in the market due to non-availability of power. So power non-availability is not something we have to overstress at this session. It is already a known case that there is little or no power in the country, and how do we address this, and how do we mitigate against this? So hence, renewables, easy to deploy, fast to access, and we talk of rooftop solar. Rooftop solar, next slide, we provide instant access to power no matter where you are within the Lagos market and nationally. And the level of rooftop solar currently deployed is quite low and can easily be a bridging gap. You know, I heard our experts speak about, you know, the distribution lines and all that. But with rooftop solar, we can reach thousands and millions of citizens in one sweep. And it can be a mitigating factor for powering our markets or powering our healthcare institutions, powering our schools, you know. So it is an easy source of a quick win. And what will rooftop solar do? Rooftop solar will send these 4.5 million generators back home. There is a lady, the geologist of Shomolu Market, that we work with to deploy the cold storage that was showcased at the beginning of this session. She made a joke that now her generator is doing what? Resting in peace. I told Geologist, permit me to quote you that your mantra now is that my generator is resting in peace. So we can displace 4.5 million generators in Lagos with rooftop solar if it is adopted. And we will now talk about the incentive for those adaptations. So next slide. Mini grids in our commercial centers, in our communities, can reduce and remove generators as well. Because what we are talking of, how do we have a better lifestyle? And these are what we have done with REA, World Bank, and UNDP in this regard. Then next slide, please. The cooling storage solution, example of what we have done in Olalaye market, and we can repeat in many more markets, or we reduce carbon emission. Next slide. We have e-mobility and e-charging stations that will be able to send or displace 1.8 million vehicles that are also consuming energy not just energy, polluting the environment with a CO2 emission. So we have started driving the charge in e-mobility with two-wheeler, three-wheelers, and we should have been at this event with one of them, but thanks to Nigerian Customs Service, and that is how easy it is to do business in Nigeria. A vehicle that has been at the port for almost 1 month, just waiting for a brand name registration with Nigerian Customs Service, and later we have to pay demurrage. But one customer told me this is founder's pain, you know, so first mover's pain. So we are bearing the pain at Cloud Energy, and we'll get it there. Hopefully we'll have another opportunity to launch this in a bigger way with His Excellency and the Commissioner. So nothing is lost, it is only time that we will also gain back. So next slide, please. So we are looking at how do we also catalyze growth in the riverine communities. So we have solar dryers that will be able to convert waste, post-harvest waste from fish farming, and they catalyze the use of the coastlines in Lagos, because we have so much water bodies that aquaculture can be a big portion of our GDP. And Professor Naji did mention something that we all have to bear in mind, that with the increase of GDP, there is an increase in what? In power consumption. So this power challenge is not just about today, it is an existential issue. So that whatever you see is the power challenge today is just a nursery rhyme to what will be the power challenge tomorrow. Because once people get comfortable, their appetite grows, they demand more power, and what happens? They buy more gadgets. When they buy more gadgets, they become more successful, they buy more gadgets. So in the world of AI, we heard that one bulb, one AI click is like several servers open. So there's going to be continual power increase, power demand. So it is caused on us to use all the resources we have. And one good thing that happens to us, I say providentially, we are the most luckiest people in the world. We are positioned in a part of the world where all resources are available, and it is just for us to catalyze all of them for growth. Next slide. So what are the incentives that government has to put in place to make it easier for citizens to have access to these forms of energy? Policies. You cannot take away the impact of policies. If there is a credible policy in place, there will be ease of investment, and somebody bringing his money to the market will be able to do what? Say, okay, I am confident that I'm not wasting my time. Standards. Government should be a key player in enforcing and implementing standards. Now, there is so much disruption in the market, from people who bring in Tokumbo solar panels to reuse lithium batteries, to all kinds of proliferation in the market, and nobody is checking them because there is no standard, there is no consequences for bad behavior. And this gives the industry a bad name. They say, solar doesn't work. You don't know whether it's a solar that has lasted the end of its life and washed and brought to the market. Meanwhile, government is the last arbiter to set up standards that allow people to have a good behavior. Now, will I buy an electric car in Lagos? What is the benefit or incentive that the government can give me? Will I have free parking in some government-designated parking area? Will there be rebates? And most inclusively, how do we catalyze access and investment people have in the society to drive about a transition? One of the biggest barriers to people adopting renewables is how much it costs them to transition. And that transition is not easy if you don't have a deep pocket. That's why we have financiers like Selling Back, FCMB, and Stanbic, who are trying to raise local capital towards leveraging and making it easy for people to transition. Is it possible that for a resident in Lagos State with his land use title to be able to access financing? Can a Lagos State government create a credit union based on people's existing assets and facility and use that credit union as a guarantee for them to have access to pay for renewable? Because their property is already in Lagos, right? They're not going to carry their homes away. Why do we make access and transition from one stage to another very difficult, that a bank will ask you to pay 35–40% interest rate just because you want to transition to a clean energy? And can we create a group carbon credits chain? Something interesting happened to my sister in Ireland. One day she smiled and told me that she received $400 thanks to carbon credit. Next slide. Yes, carbon credit. At home, she got paid because the government is looking at carbon emission and what is it that citizens can do. Next slide, please. So we call on government to create this incentive because it is good for government. Jobs are generated, people live a better life, and they have steady electricity. So next slide. So this is a market initiative. Next slide. These are a few things we have done at Cloud Energy. Next slide. These are partners that we have worked with. And next slide. I just said government exists because of the people. And we have to do what? Give power to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
So back to you, our able moderator. Thank you so much.
Before we run into the panel session, we'll just have Mr. Clark do his presentation. He has 5 minutes.
My PowerPoint, please. Sir? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much for the invite to today's summit. And I appreciate...
Mr. Clark.
That's my... Yeah, this is my presentation.
Media, may we have Mr. Clark's presentation?
Sorry? Okay.
Media, please go on with his presentation. Thank you. Media, may we have the presentation now?
All right. Thank you very much again. Sorry about the slight delay in the start of the presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to present here this afternoon, and thanks to the Honorable Commissioner for organizing this summit. Without wasting much time, next slide, please. So I'm going to be taking you through a few slides that speaks to the topic. Please, next slide, please. So this very cartoon basically highlights in summary, the challenge of electricity and energy independence road. And as you can see in this slide, next slide, please, there are so many hurdles on the way that encapsulate everything we've talked about this morning. Thank you. Encapsulate most of the things we've been talking about today. So as you can see here, the road to energy sustainability involves so many things. And as you have heard from so many people, including the Professor Batnaji this afternoon, whom I was privileged to have attended one of his Energy Road Summit in London in 2010. And I was also still really impressed about the summary that he gave again this afternoon. And in summary, as you can see in this slide, there are so many things. There is the finance issues. There is the increase in global energy demand. There is the issue of zero emission, that's net zero, and carbon credits, as you've heard earlier. There is issue of the green holds bond for financing projects, government policies. All these things combined together tells us that we have to look at the problem holistically. So if you're talking about energy transition, we're not talking about cessation. So in other words, we're not removing gas or oil from the chain when we talk about renewable energy, but we are actually looking at how we can harness all available opportunity to make sure that the energy sustainability is achieved. Next slide, please. So, and one other thing that needs to be considered is the decommissioning of facilities. So at the start of most projects, whether it's electricity or gas or all other power generation system, we always have to look at the end game of the whole process. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief summary of where we stand in terms of other aspects of other places in Africa. It is important that we know where we stand now so we know how to deal with the problem and how to tackle this going into the future. So I've divided the whole of Africa into about 5 regions. We are in the West Africa. This is currently what obtains generating power from thermal as well as oil and gas. That's oil and gas as well as hydro. But if you go to the north of Africa, energy is highly sustainable. Almost 100% of energy supply is obtainable in the northern part of Africa. Other parts of Africa, like the South Africa, East Africa, they have other mix of energy sources, including not only solar or renewable energy, but also nuclear. Next slide, please. Now, these statistics, next slide, please. This statistics basically shows us that electricity in Africa, as compared to the southern Saharan, sub-Saharan part of Africa, we have a bit of hurdle or mountain to climb. of which this kind of summit helps or allows us to propel our efforts in that direction. So if you look at Africa as a whole, we're about 75% in terms of electricity generation, of which rural electrification is just about half of that, meaning that some aspect or some places are deprived, even though we have in the major cities, that's in the main cities, electricities are readily available. As compared to the sub-Saharan Africa, it's even less when you go to the sub-cities. And that doesn't exclude Lagos State. So as you go from the main cities, you go to the sub-cities, then you see that there is a drastic supply. At times, electricity might be available, but it might not actually be reachable or accessible to the people. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so for Lagos State, what does this mean? We're looking at clean energy. That's the focus for the Lagos State, and that's the drive. But how do we attract finance to drive clean energy in the state? So this cycle, basically, the summary, the key point from this slide is that we have to look at the investor as people who are here to make their money and return on investment. Return on investment is key to any investor. Net present value of their investment is also critical. The internal rate of return is also important. So in other words, these metrics must be met for any investor to see a viable environment to bring their investment into. Secondly, the impact of power projects on the life of the people of the state, and likewise the equity to debt ratio that comes with such investment, and the capital investment that is involved. So the cost of capital may be as high as 10%. So if somebody is going to make a return of investment with a break-even point of, let's say, 3 years, then we are really looking at a holistic conviction for such investor to bring their project into the state. Next slide, please. Okay. Sorry. Right, so with, on that basis, I'll go straight into the 3 highlights of the theme for this plenary section. The first is financing instrument and risk management. So when we have investors bring in their investment into the country or into the states, what are the instruments that are available to them? And here the panel will be looking at a number of things, including green bond that is already available by the federal government, and whether this is properly annexed or not, it should be subject of discussion. And what are the strategies available for that? Secondly, the government policies and regulatory framework. So we had the NUPRC this afternoon, representative of the lead for that they gave very impressive discussion about the government policies involving gas supply. Now, is this enough for investors to be convinced? I think yes, and there are important things to discuss on that. The public-private communities and stakeholders, Professor Aluko was saying earlier that we have to look at the whole thing, not just the GENCOs, not just the DISCOs, and not just the TRANSCOs, but also even the communities, that's the consumer cos. So about 6 of them, they all need to be involved in this scope. So in summary, the Finance Act 2022 basically speak to these financing issues, and I've summarized this in 4 points. Pioneer status incentive, that's giving tax holidays to companies, accelerated capital allowances, and as well as VAT exemption. These are some of the instruments that could be used to encourage renewable investors to participate actively. The green bond, I've already talked about that. So in summary, the energy trilemma for Lagos State, 6 gigawatts challenge, speaks to this in terms of energy security, that's making the energy available, this is the part of the effort from the Lagos State which is laudable. Affordability in terms of equity. So in other words, not just only the people who have money or projects that could afford electricity, but also making equity such that every individual will be able to access electricity. Sustainability is also very, very important. So of more importance is the diversification of power generation. So we have to think outside of the box. So if you have gas pipeline going from the central Niger Delta area passing through Lagos State, it might be the case that we might start to think about other sources of gas supply, maybe by compressed natural gas, bringing them by barges to state, and then doing some reprocessing in the state to make sure that power projects can be supported. And then, lastly, the conclusion here is that so Nigeria is endowed with a lot of energy resources, including fossil fuel, oil and gas, as well as renewable, but there are currently some challenges. Now, Lagos State is leading and actually actively pioneering new initiatives and some important steps at enabling, putting enabling framework to place to make sure that the state is energy independent. And bridging the skills and knowledge gap is very, very important. So we need knowledge transfer, we need capacity building, we also need upstream and downstream investment and participation. And then annexing the Green Bond initiative is also very, very important. So this is all for my slide, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Media, are we ready?
Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. I'd like to apologize. I think there's been a little bit of a mix-up that two of us have actually done the same titled presentation. So, Commissioner, if it's possible, I will present mine, but I will only focus on the points that I think are very different, if that's okay. I do apologize for that. Mine is the same title, as you can see, Developing and Financing Clean Energy Infrastructure in a State Electricity Market. I've made a sort of change. I focused on developing infrastructure, and that's a part that I'd like to talk to. I've taken infrastructure in its most broadest sense, and I think that if you do that, Lagos has the opportunity to do things slightly differently. So Lagos is at this inflection point. We all know about it. It's breaking off. It's defining its own electricity market. The thing I'd like people to consider is, how should Lagos look at this? And the analogy that I use is that it's like going on a new diet. Do you just want a new diet, or do you really want to change your mindset? And I think that Lagos has the opportunity to move forward with what I would call a change mindset. Now, the approach of this presentation hasn't been to present to you, Commissioner, with any answers, but to help perhaps ask questions better. And in asking the questions, because I don't know the answers, Lagos itself will find the answers that fits Lagos. So, as I said, there are two pillars to this presentation. The first one is developing. The second part is financing. I just want to stick to developing. So, what is the context? The context we have here, as we all know, I'm not going to repeat it too much, is that we've moved from... Yes, okay, I've got those the wrong way. What we've moved from is EPSRA, the Electricity Power Supply Reform Act. And under that, the market was run under a model called the New Delhi model. So the legislation supporting Lagos now is the Electricity Act 2023, but it's up to Lagos now to define its own market model. Okay, so BPE in the privatization with NERC in Abuja, where I come from, they decided that the whole country was going to run on the New Delhi model. And quite frankly, that doesn't work. So what has Lagos got? Well, actually, Lagos bears a lot of resemblance to New Delhi, but don't use a New Delhi model, Commissioner. It's got a large and dense population. It has reliable data, and that's very good, both of customers and land registries, and it has an inherent market legibility. So Lagos is a dense zone, which if you were to speak to the technical people, the engineers, they tell you it should be easier for Lagos to resolve its distribution loss measures, because it's not like Kaduna or Niger that has a village every 20 kilometers along a 33 kV distribution line. So I'm going to focus on this: developing clean energy infrastructure. Those words sound very familiar, but I do think that there are a lot of examples around the world that if Lagos looks at, Lagos can perhaps investigate and see whether that suits Lagos. And the whole point of these 5 themes, and these 5 themes on the infrastructure is where I think Lagos should focus on. The first theme is a data-first strategy. The second one is to solve things in modules. What may solve in one part may not solve in another. Distributed systems and then shared physical spaces. So what do I mean by data? You can't build what you can't see. And what Lagos needs to see is where its customers are, what type those customers are, how much they need, how much demand that they need, and whether they will pay, how creditworthy they are. And that's very important. So there's 3 examples of where this has been done around the world. The first one I'd like to point out is Rwanda. Rwanda runs what is an EGIS system, similar to, I think, what Lagos is putting in place last year. But they've actually got it to the point that the whole of Kigali is a digital model for infrastructure. So they can see where their pipes are, they can see where their pylons are, they can see where their customers are. The second model on data is Kenya and Kenya Power. What Kenya did was that it linked the identity of customers to what I call revenue identity. It linked it to tax for corporates, it linked it to banking IDs, and it linked it to power. So all those 3 databases are known. The one thing to realize is NERC is the only regulator that doesn't know who I am. The CBN knows who I am, NCC knows who I am, but NERC has no idea. And that is what this is pointing to, that once you start linking databases together, you get a much better idea. And the third one is India. India linked the databases to identity databases. One of the projects we tried to do at the CBN when we were doing the Nigerian mass metering program was to link BVNs. The discos liked the idea, but NERC didn't. So that's the idea, linking the identity to other identities. And I understand Lagos has a whole bunch of resident identities as well. So having them on GIS, knowing the affordability of the customer from revenue databases, knowing their banking, I guess, through a BVN, will give you a much better idea of where you can be focusing and how much you should be getting from those areas. So data is the base layer. The next theme. Can we bypass this broken system? Now, strangely enough, whether you like it or not, there are a lot of generators in the system. But there are many models of where different countries have looked at. Now, Bangladesh has, since 2003, has had a program of supplying solar home systems, and that's from solar fridges to solar panels. South Africa and Haiti do something very similar to the REA, which is bringing in mini grids that are off the main grid and connecting them to other people. So that is, certain people can be delivered without using the grid, but that's something that we do know about through REA. Now, the third theme is this, and this is probably quite important. When we talk about clean energy infrastructure, we go beyond poles and wires. one of the things that Lagos might be looking to consider is as follows. In California, they are looking at what is called vehicle-to-grid charging systems. Essentially, if you look at it, an EV car has a battery that's probably twice the size of a home inverter. So you actually have, if you look at your buses, which are going to have batteries, your cars, which are going to have batteries, is that you have storage systems driving around Lagos, which may charge at home, or charge in the office, or charge in other places. Another example is India has what are called smart corridors. How this could probably look is that something along the Lagos-Ibadan highway, you would have a whole bunch of charging stations. The Lekki-Epe, I don't know my roads too well in Lagos. The Lekki-Epe highway as well is something that you could look to by providing a direct line of power and charging stations along it. And like I said, these cars can literally go back to their house with 70 kilowatt hours of battery and keep the house going overnight. And then there are other ones about distributed solar in Vietnam and smart meters. Those things will be more known about. But it's a car, looking at EVs and cars is very critical, and how they can interact with residential and commercial properties. So the fourth theme is shared rights of way. Now, this is something that even though you are looking at power sector and energy, there's a lot of infrastructure networks operate over a right of way. And this is where digital technology and like Kigali's digital twin comes in. If you're going to dig something in the ground, you should make sure that as many utilities can use that path as possible, whether that's fiber optic, whether that's a high voltage DC line, whether that's a gas pipeline, or whether that's a transmission line. So there are lots of examples in India, in Rwanda, that when you dig something for a piece of infrastructure, you dig it for all infrastructure. So if you're going to be doing a new road, that new road has to be enabled to transmit fiber optic, to transmit power cable at high voltage or low voltage or both, and to transmit, if possible, and if it's safe, gas or other energy pipelines. So that's sharing rights of way between different infrastructure. And that all goes back to planning and data from where the customers are. And the final and fifth theme is, can we use generators? Now, I do know this is about clean energy, but one of the issues of generators is, and there's a good example in the Philippines, that they are using generators to transit the grid from dirty to clean, and that there are incentives there that reduce the use of generator usage by rooftop solar and other things like that. So I think those 5 themes is what I'd like to focus on. Otherwise, if I go into the financing, I'll start talking about green bonds and I'll bore everyone. So I think infrastructure for clean energy can be defined differently, and it requires a different approach, but really it all stems from the first thing, which is data. Linking the data to your customers and linking those customers to other databases and putting them on a GIS map, and the development and the growth of your infrastructure, however you want to do it, by cars, by solar panels, now becomes a lot easier to track, now becomes a lot easier to plan. So that's my part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot. I'm always intrigued by Ebipere Clark's presentations, and obviously his deep London accent. Good evening, everyone. Standing on existing protocols, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Commissioner, I'm humbled by this opportunity, and I want us to quickly jump into it, because I consider the electricity market in Nigeria like a burning platform. If you're in the deep sea and your platform, your rig is on fire, right? And you have to put the fire out. You know, there's some the way it focuses your senses. You know, so we have no time to lose. And we're talking about clean energy. In a study that we had done, we looked at the growth of the importation of panels into Africa over the last 5 years. It's a paper published at COP. And we had seen within 2 years, it grew from $1.1 billion to $2.6 billion within 2 years. In Nigeria, I was talking to Oksana on the side, solar panels importation, that's the one you can track, has grown from our study from pre-COVID of about 100 megawatts per year to about 600 megawatts per year. Clean energy is something we can't ignore, right? It's been on the sidelines for too long. And I think that Lagos State, you might think, oh, it's not the ideal location for clean energy, but the data based on what I think Commissioner Larry mentioned about the rooftop solar potential, and you mentioned who did the number of generators making life miserable for all of us. It's a problem. But I'm pleased, and in fact, merging the two panels makes my job easy, slightly hard, but I have the full complement of the value chain here. I have lenders, I have manufacturers, I also have intellectuals and developers. My name is Erhabor Okogun. I'm the head of energy infrastructure and director at KPMG for West Africa. I'm going to start with Oksana. Now, you have a facility where you assemble and manufacture solar panels, right? From an incentive perspective, so I'm going to ask questions on the reality, right? I'm not going to situate it in the air. What incentives do you require? You're based in Lagos, you're down the road. What incentives do you require to drive the adoption of solar technology? And in what markets do you think? C&I, retail, embedded, utility scale, captive. If you could quickly just tell us that.
Right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriel, and I'm standing in for our CEO, who is unavoidably absent. So just a quick one to the question asked. For us, basically real time, one of the challenges that we have faced is being able, of course, financing. There is no way else, there's no other way you can be able to scale up manufacturing without some level of incentive or financing involved. For us, we had to rely at the earliest stages from personal funds, which is not even sufficient enough to be able to give you that scale or that better pricing that we are looking for. So for us, basically, like every other country like China and the UK that tried to accelerate solar adoption, they had some level of tax incentives, subsidies. There are countries that give subsidies to their manufacturers, maybe not cash, maybe not money, but in terms of maybe land, you know, and you are able to pay for the land over some period of time that can be able to help you to stabilize and produce. So for us, basically, we also had the challenge of getting even the low-hanging fruits like paper documentations that can also help us to raise financing. So if some of those little issues can be solved, I think so many other players will be able to come. For instance, there can be industrial hubs that can be set up basically for solar manufacturing people in such a way that they can have access to lands, they can have access to documents like CFO, government consent. Those are valuable documents that can be used to even help you to raise finance, to be able to scale. You know, so I believe we can start from those low-hanging fruits. Some countries also have an arrangement with their governments to have maybe a certain percentage of their products that are off-take by government, maybe 30%, 20%, that you say, okay, this government is supporting this business by off-taking that quantity. It also creates a level of stability for that manufacturer to be able to push through. But if we are to be able to scale up and supply, because we are not just, there are other factors that affect manufacturing in Nigeria. We have the power issues, and so sometimes it's difficult for us to compete on price. But if the government can be able to take up some of those things, maybe tax relief, maybe help us process documents faster, that can also help, then probably we get maybe low interest loans that are single digit loans. Some of all those savings can be translated to the consumer. They can be translated to the consumer at lower cost. So the consumer can be getting those products cheaper once the manufacturer can be able to get some of those incentives. But if the manufacturer has to focus on funding its own products by its own financing or its own cash flow, it becomes a little bit difficult. So maybe those are the low-hanging fruits we can start with. Then we can
okay, that's good to know. Since we're talking about financing, which obviously Gabriel has indicated is required to scale, and also in terms of local content, in a way. Let me bring in Shay, who's the group head for renewables and sustainable finance for Sterling Bank. Sterling Bank, I think, has deliberately positioned itself, in my opinion, as the #1 lender, commercial bank lender for renewable energy in Nigeria. It'd be great to understand, what led to that deliberate decision and what has been, by way of a case study, what lessons you've learned in terms of trying to scale. Now, my focus for you is on scale, right? So I'm talking about megawatts of clean energy. How have you been able to support the increase in capacity, and what types of renewables have you financed? I know in Nigeria, in Lagos, just offshore, I think they got the best winds in Nigeria. I also know there is also floating solar taking place, being piloted in the lagoon. But beyond those sort of embryonic projects, I know that there's been significant, large, captive solar power plants in Lagos. If you go on Google Earth and look between, I think around Badagry, near the Topo, you'll see from satellites megawatts of solar panels right by the ocean. And people say, oh, there's no irradiation in Lagos, but right by the ocean there, we're seeing megawatts of solar. So you must have a portfolio of investments in Lagos that have been successful. It'll be interesting to know how you've gone through that journey. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Sheyi Okurunga. I'm the group head for renewable energy in Sterling Bank. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what you asked, what led to our decision to be involved in renewable energy? I think Sterling Bank took a strategic decision many years ago, about 8 to 9 years ago, to look at some sector within the economy. We call it the heart of Sterling. The health, education, agriculture, renewable energy, and transportation. We, like my MD would say, that's Abubakar Sulaiman, what he will say is that there is hardly a day that you will live that you do not come across, that you don't get involved in one of those things. We call it the heart of Sterling. Either you are involved with health, education, agriculture, renewable, or transportation. Coming here, you would have done transportation. Energy, renewable, you are just involved. If you are not involved in these 5 things, you are probably not living. And that is why we took a strategic decision to focus on those areas. Now, for renewable energy in particular, we realize that as a country, there's one of the presenters spoke about the fact that there hasn't been growth in infrastructure for transmission, most especially. We realize that close to over 30 years right now, there hasn't been a significant growth in infrastructure, especially to transmission. And when is this going to happen? We recognize the fact that captive power development is the way to go in the immediate. And that is part of what the federal government has done by decentralizing the Electricity Act, to state level. It's all part of captive solution for power. So going into that is to ensure that we reach out to those areas, to those businesses, to those individuals who seemingly have it difficult to get power. And we understand that for every business, for every economy, the moment you introduce power into a business structure or a development, there is growth within that economy. And that is the truth. So we took a strategic decision to invest within the renewable energy sector big time. And that is how we saw, and in order to scale, we cut across the entire options that is available, talking about solar home system, SHS, mini grid, hydro, and what have you. And in doing this, as a bank, we've faced a lot of challenges. It was, in the beginning, very difficult to bank a lot of transactions because as a country, we were also learning. Majority of all the equipment parts were literally coming from abroad, right? I mean, it's not until recently that we started having the likes of Ozano, maybe Levine, that are coming into the low solar panel production, and gradually. And in the process of it, we've burnt our fingers. We've learned our lessons. It has been a time where we've brought in batteries that are substandard, because like the other gentleman said, there is no, okay, you were the one that said it, there is no standard. There is no strict policy guiding the importation of some of these equipment, right? And for you to get a financier, like a bank, to invest in renewable energy, knowing fully well that the products you are bringing in are substandard, you are failing right from the word go. Nobody is going to put their money in a business or a venture that you know that the equipment will not last the lifetime. I mean, how would you seek an investment of 5 years, but the equipment will only last maybe 1 year or 2? So we've learned our lesson. So we took a position to start engaging experienced technicians, engineers. We took our time to engage experts who are able to identify some of those equipments that are very reliable. For example, the likes of cloud energy. Part of the, by the way, cloud energy is one of our customers. So part of the reasons, one of the reasons why we engaged them or why we are doing business with them is because they have after-sales service locally. So even if they are importing, even if they are assembling locally, if you have a problem with their equipment, you can quickly refer to them. I will not invest in a company that will literally go and bring 100% a product from China and they don't have after-sales service. I brought in about 200 units of inverters some time ago, and about 25% of those inverters went dead. And the only thing the Chinese man told us was to bring it back to China. How is that possible? So these are the things these are part of the lessons we've learned. As a financier, we also understand that there is a need for a single-digit financing. I mean, every one of us know what MPR is doing right now. The cost of, investing or engaging in a renewable energy project or buying an equipment is not a cheap business, even though at long run you reap the benefit. So we will, as a bank, we work with agencies, the likes of RA, the likes of World Bank, some foundations who probably want to extend some what we call credit risk guarantee to reduce the risk of a transaction for us to invest in it. And I think that's about answers everything. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Let me bring in Daniel here. Daniel, I want to talk about how will I put this? I don't want to talk about risks, right? But I would like you to sort of speak to the risks. So essentially, what I would like to sort of bring together, one is risks, and the other is in terms of bonds, right? Now, bonds to some extent is a way to de-risk a certain sort of financial situation, right? And I know that in InfraCredit, you've been very successful. Recently you got listed, so let me say fixed income. You got listed, and congratulations on that. But you also regularly are able to tap into the pension funds. And so I want you to use risk, fixed income, and how you think that's a platform to scale up renewable energy and clean energy in Lagos State.
Thank you. And thanks for the note of congratulations. And it's a pleasure to be here. In terms of leveraging the domestic institutional investment that exists, so the Nigerian pension community is sitting on 23 trillion naira in assets under management. And that presents an amazing opportunity to basically structure the right kind of financing that infrastructure projects need. Pension funds are serving a youthful population, so they're actually looking for long-term investments, 10-year, 15-year, 20 years. That's the kind of investment that pension funds want to purchase as debt instruments, fixed income securities. And that's the right kind of financing for the clean Lagos electricity market. Now, if you're financing a petrol generator, it's probably not a 10-year asset. But if you're financing 20 megawatt gas engines, 50 megawatt turbines, if you're financing even solar panels, which are 15 years and beyond, these are long-term assets. You should be able to pair those long-term assets with access to long-term financing. Now, obviously, our role is to de-risk those investments for the pension community, so they're not actually taking corporate credit risk or project credit risk. So that's the opportunity in front of us. That's what we've been doing the last 8 years, and we've supported many clients that have raised basically over 300 billion naira in long-term debt instruments on the back of our guarantee. Most of these are publicly listed corporate infrastructure bonds, so you can actually track their performance. You can see that these companies are performing, and thankfully for us, our guarantees are not being called. And that is all part of this landscape. We're not the only one facilitating access to this kind of tenor. There are other infrastructure funds. Obviously, Joe Ballo's here from ARM. There's also the local currency infrastructure funds that are pushing out the tenor to 10 years. And that's really the kind of financing that is available. And I'm glad that the market has evolved so much that we have states able to issue electricity licenses. We didn't have that before. We have more infrastructure funds, and we have ourselves that can provide the credit enhancement. We have access to gas that we've never had before in terms of piped LNG, CNG. There's a lot more opportunity right now that we can all tap into. And I think being in Lagos State, where you have two viable distribution companies, this is where we're going to prove that the model works and can be scaled everywhere across the country. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Now, I'm going to bring in Ebipere Clark, and I didn't catch your name, sorry. Theophilus, and also Dr. Akanji. Now, for Ebipere, you used to be the special advisor to the central bank governor, right? And I want to ask you this question around how do you create a synergy between federal and state, right? Given the fact that there is, from an infrastructure perspective, there is a lot of federal infrastructure that comes into Lagos. We had the former MD of TCN talk about the studies they've done from Akongba to Alagbon that never got built. These are TCN facilities. So I want to ask you, what are the ways that now that Lagos State is creating its market, what are the ways you think the state and the federal can collaborate from a funding perspective? Either multilateral, right? Either the CBN SLAs, either the metering, but particularly when it comes to clean energy and our Paris agreements and NDCs. How do you think, I mean, there's the DARES program, there's all of those programs that's ongoing. It's just interesting to know from you, how do you create a better synergy between what's happening at the federal and what should happen at the state in driving infrastructure and clean energy adoption?
Thank you. I think that's a terribly loaded question that's going to get me in trouble if I answer it wrongly back in Abuja. There's many ways that synergy can occur. I'm not a transmission specialist, but there's a technical from a system planning point of view, and where the national grid will focus its wheeling. There's an operational synergy that could probably come by the fact that how Lagos will operate with the wholesale market. And then there's other aspects in terms of payment. So, you know, I think you might have to qualify which synergy you're looking for, the technical, the operational, or the payment, and which leads to the funding. I think that to answer that, there needs to be some operation between them, and I don't think it's well defined. Let me put it that way. Right now, the wholesale market, Lagos has always been the best payer in the, Echo and Ikeja in the wholesale market. If somehow Lagos procures power outside of the wholesale market, that would put a greater burden on the federal government to support the non-Lagos side. Just to give you an idea, both Echo and Ikeja pay over 90% of their invoices. The average for the market is like 45%. So if Lagos now gets PPAs and pays them uniquely, the rest of the market, taking 3,000 to 3,500 megawatts, will probably only pay 25%. So I believe there might be a rush of Gencos to try to sell power on the wholesale market to Lagos. That isn't a synergy, that's just running for the hills, if you see what I mean. Now, how Lagos can operate in terms of its own infrastructure on a national asset, the TCN, there is something that we did at the CBN, which was to actually get the discos to lend money to TCN through NERC's regulation called, I forgot it at the time. So essentially, you lend, it's like a concession agreement. So the CBN lent money to the discos lent money to TCN. TCN then built infrastructure in the discos area, and the discos reduced the payments they made to TCN as a result of the money they had lent. So that's the synergy in terms of the planning. But then you have to get TCN to agree to whatever part of its network you have to build. So those are the two things I could point to.
Yeah.
There are ways of doing it.
Yes, I think that gives a good template, and it's instructive when you talk about how large the Lagos State market is in terms of liquidity versus the whole country. But let me speak about. Let me ask, Doctor. I don't know if you've read the Lagos electricity law. I think section 147 or thereabout, that talks around the communities, setting up of, I think, a community host fund and the like. And the idea is we have these major players in the power sector. Yes, Lagos is very urbanized, but they are peri-urban. They're present in Ekpe, Badagry, Ikorodu, and thereabout, that don't have the same purchasing power and the same sort of energy access. How do you think, from what you've seen around the world, that communities can benefit and can and will not be ignored, in the electricity market that Lagos State is trying to create?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. So I think that's a very important point from the view that the synergy that comes from the federal with the states will go at a long way in protecting the communities, particularly the less privileged ones. We've seen so many examples, for instance, in Scotland. Currently, Scotland produces their electricity independently. About 98% of electricity is coming from wind turbine, which is basically coming from the North Sea installations. And at the moment, we have the local communities benefiting from this, not only within Scotland. So Scotland now is a net exporter of electricity to other parts of UK. That's England is one of the nations within the United Kingdom that buys electricity from Scotland. Likewise, Wales. So if we look at that sort of approach, a synergistic approach that is centralized within the law, Nigeria, the federal system, federal government in Nigeria can work synergistically with Lagos State in facilitating infrastructure, ensuring that the very old infrastructure for transmission and distribution are put up to state of the art, and thereby protecting the communities in which these infrastructures are to be installed. Thirdly, we've actually seen that when it comes to renewable energy, if you bring in such to some communities, you may see some resistance. And this is very, it's understandable, because unless you're able to demonstrate the benefits to the people, either by way of giving them some incentives, employing people from the community, building access roads, giving some scholarship to them, they would definitely resist such. So, well, if these facilities are available, then communities will be very open to accepting these facilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, I'm getting notes upon notes, that, how do you say it in Yoruba? Iletishu, So we'll just take, and I'm bringing Jobola as the last. Why? Because you have an equity fund, right? You do greenfield. You do projects from concept, right? Those are the most risky sort of projects. And when we're talking about clean energy, to some extent, compared to gas, it's not as proven. Now, when you look at the Lagos State law, I think it's maybe Section 84 or 79, there's several new sort of opportunities there, trading licenses, supply licenses, and the like. And these are new initiatives that will probably come to like a fund like yours and say, hey, fund me to develop infrastructure or to build out this license. Could you, tell us a bit about your fund and how you think your fund, the equity fund, can support clean energy development in Lagos State?
Thank you. Thank you. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Jobalo Oshikonlu. I'm Deputy CEO at Harith, Infrastructure Investment Limited. At Harith, we have a long track record of investing in infrastructure, including public-private partnerships, including in investing in Lagos State government infrastructure. And of course, we have also invested vastly in the energy space, energy projects, both traditional power as well as renewable power. We have a dynamic platform where we integrate domestic institutional capital, as well as international capital. We have also an increasing array of investors who are interested in clean energy, clean technology, renewable power, and so on and so forth. And I think that with Lagos State has come a long way in providing leadership in basically catalyzing private investment into infrastructure in Nigeria. And of course, we all know very well Lagos State government's trajectory of growth, whether it is in terms of GDP growth or internally generated revenue. Back in the days when we did the Lekki Toll Road concession with Lagos State government, in those days, the Lagos State government was talking about an IGR of under 60 billion in a whole year. Fast forward 10 years, it was over 300 billion, and I think now, maybe in the next 1 year, we're talking about trillion or something like that. So Lagos State government definitely is well positioned and is living up to the expectation in terms of providing leadership. And of course, from coming a long way from back in the days when, I think we talked, Enron barges was talked about earlier, in early 2000s. Now, Lagos State government passed the first law to enable private investment outside of telecoms and oil and gas in 2004. We have this new law that was signed in last year. And I think that there's a huge play for clean energy, clean technology, renewable power in this new law. It is music to the ears of a lot of investors, including those with us. And we think that there is a lot that can be done to basically harness the potential and also the lessons learned from various initiatives that have been promoted by the Lagos State government, and including at the federal level. There's a lot that can be learned to make sure that we can take advantage of this new opportunity and that is going to bring about a new wave of development from the Lagos State government law that has been passed. And I can tell you that, for example, I think a lot has been said today about investors, about the importance of investors being able to have a line of sight to recovering their investment and getting a reasonable return on their investment, follow the money, be able to see how they can see their way clear to get into stable and predictable cash flows after delivering the infrastructure. It's very important. And I think that in this new law, there is, in terms of the tariff, which the tariff setting, the tariff setting principles and the methodology, I think that part of what has been recognized in that in those tariff principles, the key one being recognition of the need to promote clean technology and renewable power, has been well recognized. So that is helpful, and that is good. I think that that is very important because, generally speaking, renewable power tends to require a different type of pricing regime when you compare it to other types of power generation, like thermal power. You have a different type of power because basically the profile of recoveries is different. And the sort of tariffs that you expect to come out, especially in the early days, is also different. So because of that, I think it will be very important for the government to to make ready to be able to provide targeted subsidies in areas where they will be required. These are sort of the things that investors will be looking for. There are various ways by which this can be achieved to ensure that you can ensure that the project can be bankable and financeable. There is no one way, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. But definitely in a place like Lagos, you still have the peri-urban areas where you have a concentration of SMEs. You have the agrarian communities where you need to provide them with power. You also want to make sure that you can provide them with clean power, renewable power in those areas as well. But to ensure that you can have affordable tariff in those areas, government will need to, it's important for them to look at how you can target subsidies. And I said there are various ways you could do that. There is the grant-enabled mini-grid arrangements that has been tested in other areas and have proven to be successful. We have some of those investments on platforms we have today, and they have been very, very successful. And I think that it can go a long way in making sure that you can catalyze the interest of sponsors and investors in this area. I mean, some of these are multilateral institution-backed, World Bank grants and all of that. They come to play. There are also other ways to do that. You could have in-kind grants that can be provided to project developers and to project investors to ensure that these projects can have a more affordable profile, and you can come up with a bankable case that can ensure the bankability of the project and ensure that the project can raise capital and you can actually deliver. And these are temporary arrangements that they are not like the type of subsidies you pay permanently over the life of a project. There are things that you can do to facilitate the takeover over a period of time. Now, beyond that, I think one very important feature in this new law as well that we have seen is the work of the what is meant to be the mandate of the Lagos State I think it's called the Electrification Agency. Now, that agency is supposed to be responsible for managing power utilities and public assets, as well as to promote renewable power. And I think that there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of potential that can be done with that agency. Now, one of the important considerations for all types of development, and which of course is important for Lagos State as well at this time, is to think, when you are thinking about it, it's almost like doing a SWOT analysis. You look at what are your limitations, what are your advantages, what are your opportunities. Now, Lagos State uniquely, despite being the strongest GDP in Nigeria, has the smallest landmass in Nigeria. Now, you have the smallest landmass in Nigeria, but on the other hand, it's called the state of aquatic splendor. There's so much water space, but there's so little limited land space. So what challenges does that pose, which investors will be looking to for how Lagos State will tackle? Now, renewable energy, generally speaking, tends to require a lot of land. So you are going to have to find ways by which you can deal with your limitations and turn them into real opportunities. For example, given that we're talking a lot about solar panels, solar manufacturing, and so on and so forth, where are you going to find the land to put all the panels? Now, Lagos State government, more than any other state in the country, those other states who are also promoting clean energy, you have to be more keenly interested in battery storage. It's more important to be able to be efficient with power and store power more than other places. So we believe that Lagos government should be championing an initiative with the federal government that means that you can sort of invest or partner with both private sector and even the federal, to find a way to invest in battery manufacturing, beyond just solar panels, battery manufacturing, battery assembly, battery acquisition, in a way that it can make it more affordable for project proponents to be able to source as far as the project. I mean, of course, Lagos State government will be interested in those projects that are bound for Lagos State, that are destined for Lagos State. But Lagos State government has a greater interest than many other stakeholders in the country to ensure that you can have enhanced battery storage capacity, to make sure that you can be efficient with power, to make sure you can stop the little power that you can generate because there's limited space.
Jobola, I think we might have to cut you there. And I particularly on the point on battery storage, which is something that I think it makes sense. I mean, in California, with Tesla and all that.
I just have one last point.
One last point. Okay, so, in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. They've already given me 2 notes. I don't want anyone to give me a 3rd note, right? And the good thing is that you're in Lagos, you are down the road, you have your tickets, and I'm sure the ministry will reach out to you and everybody else. I have had the onerous task of managing the largest panel ever I've moderated in the world. But on that note, I think the important thing is that Lagos State just wanted people to know that they have the expertise. The intellectual powerhouse is available. It's been represented in this panel. We can only say a few things given the time that we have, but I think this is just to reflect on the organizers that, the capabilities are available, the capital is available, and the partners are available. So on that note, I want to thank everyone for their time and attention, and we will bring the panel to a close. Thank you very much.
Okay, permit me to do this. We will take off at, is it 9:30 tomorrow in that pamphlet? 9:30 to, no, it's 9. It's 9. 9, we'll do recap here. 9, me, I will be here. By 9:30, we will disperse to our various groups. So if you don't come on time, you may just join your group where you are supposed to be. There are 3 groups. By the time you come in the morning, there will be signages and ushers that will usher you to where you want to be. And my apologies for today, but tomorrow is a loaded day already. It's not going to be this tedious and strenuous on us. We will run from the morning to early afternoon. We'll take a break and come together at 6 p.m. for a gala night, a night of fun and celebration, and thereafter, that should be it. But in the meantime, permit us to just round up this session, and but also let me do this. You know, part of the Lagos story is a few gentlemen that have been in the trenches with us. They've done a lot of pro bono things for me, and I love to recognize and appreciate people openly. Daniel, thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Clark, thank you very much. And then the chief of them all, not be you. The chief of them all is Mr. Cloud Energy. Thank you very much. These gentlemen have done us so much favors. I just need to recognize them openly. Sorry, we are not so many, but I'm sure that whatever they have done in Lagos, they can do in several other states. Great men, thank you. Okay, let's go.
Ebipere Clark. Professor Lateef Akanji. Mr. Labanjanlimi.
Mr. Erhabor Okogun. Thank you for moderating.
Mr. Rotimi Thomas.
Next, Mr. Rotimi Thomas.
Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Daniel Muller. Energy in the room. Are we tired? I'm sure we're not tired. This is the energy powerhouse.
Mr. Dave Uduanu.
Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Theophilus Nweke from Cloud Energy. Can we applaud all our panelists and, of course, our moderator, even as they take a group picture with the Honorable Commissioner, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources. We can do better for them. It's been two panels together just to bring it to a conversation. Thank you very much.